It's Emma's first week working the night shift at Macy's. Her best friend Sarah had warned her about the weirdness, but Emma had brushed it off as superstitions. Macy's had been a staple in the city for decades, a place filled with memories for both employees and shoppers alike. There were rumors about the old store being haunted, but Emma had always chalked them up to boredom or the power of a good story. Tonight, though, something feels different. The air is thick, heavy, as if the building itself is holding its breath. Sarah had called her just before her shift started, as usual. "Listen, Em, I know you're excited to start your shift, but the place, it feels off lately. Keep an eye out for the unseen customer." Sarah laughs at her own words, but Emma can hear a thread of concern in her voice. Emma rolls her eyes as she enters the employee area, the overhead lights flickering. "Oh, please, not this again. This place isn't haunted." But the words stick in her mind. She'd heard the stories too, the rumors of a mysterious customer that would show up after hours, but no one could remember what they looked like, just that they made the store feel wrong. The store is quiet tonight except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant buzz of the elevator. Emma's first task is restocking the seasonal clothing section, and she's alone, with only the faint overhead music for company. As she arranges sweaters, she feels something shift in the air. It's subtle, like a shadow just out of her sight, a presence she can't quite pinpoint. Her fingers freeze as a soft scraping sound echoes from the far aisle. The noise is sharp, unnerving. A metal cart being pushed down the hall, though there's no one there. Emma squints toward the aisle and cautiously steps forward, looking for anything that could explain it. "Sarah?" she calls, but there's no reply. The lights flicker briefly, casting long, eerie shadows across the store. Emma's breath catches in her throat. The cart noise stops, but a low sound, almost like a sigh, lingers in the air. "Sarah, seriously, this isn't funny," Emma mutters under her breath. She pulls her phone from her pocket, trying to convince herself it's just nerves. The screen flickers briefly, showing Sarah's name on a missed call. Suddenly, she hears footsteps. Soft, deliberate. The sound of someone walking slowly toward her. Emma turns, expecting to see a customer, but the aisle is empty. Her heart races. Then, "Who's there?" she demands, trying to sound braver than she feels. No response. Just the chilling silence. By the time Sarah arrives for her rounds, Emma is visibly shaken. Her hands are clammy as she explains what's been happening. Just odd things, like the flickering lights and the strange feeling that someone's been watching her. "Listen, Em, I told you this place isn't right," Sarah says, a hint of unease in her voice. "There are things here that don't quite add up. I know you think it's just superstition, but..." She trails off as if unsure whether to say more. "The thing is, no one who works here has ever really seen the customer, just felt them. The unseen customer comes in at night, moves through the aisles, but when you try to look, they're gone." Emma laughs, but the laughter is hollow. Sounds like a bad horror movie. Sarah's eyes flicker to the security monitors. "You might want to check the back. Things tend to get weird when the store's empty." As Sarah walks away, Emma glances at the monitors. On one screen, she sees an aisle that's supposed to be empty, but there's something off. A shadow moves, then it's gone. Her heart pounds. "No, this isn't happening," she whispers to herself. "It's just a glitch." But then, from behind her, she hears it again. The unmistakable sound of a shopping cart rolling. The noise is clear now, and it's coming closer. She spins around, but there's nothing there. The air feels colder. The lights flicker again, but this time the entire store seems to tremble. Emma takes a few steps back, her breath shallow, pulse racing. "Sarah?" she calls, panic creeping into her voice. Sarah doesn't answer. Emma runs down the aisles, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. Each corner she turns seems to get darker, colder. Her mind races. Is she losing it? Is this just exhaustion? Then she hears the voice, a low, rasping whisper, almost too quiet to hear. Help me. Emma stops dead in her tracks. Her skin prickles. It's not Sarah. It's not a customer. Something else is here. She follows the sound, and as she turns the corner into the men's section, she freezes. The cart is there, stationary, facing her. The cold air presses in, heavy, suffocating. Then she hears it. The voice again, this time clearer. A whisper that feels like it's right in her ear. I was here. I never left. Emma bolts toward the exit, but as she reaches the front doors, they won't open. Panic surges as she pulls at the handles, but they stay shut. The lights flicker again, and then go out completely. The darkness is complete. Emma can barely see her hand in front of her face. She hears the footsteps again, slower now, deliberate. The cart, once stationary, begins to roll. She turns, and this time she's not alone. The unseen customer is standing in front of her. The figure is blurry, indistinct, but something in the air has shifted. The presence is strong now, as if the store itself is alive, feeding off the terror that Emma feels. Who are you? Emma's voice shakes, but she tries to stand her ground. What do you want? There's no reply. Just a slow, deliberate movement forward. The shadow looms larger, closer, and then everything goes still. The lights flicker back on, blinding her momentarily. When Emma opens her eyes, the customer is gone. The cart is gone. The store is empty again, as if nothing ever happened. She stumbles outside, gasping for air, her heart still racing. Sarah stands at the door, looking at her with wide, concerned eyes. You saw it, didn't you? Sarah asks quietly, her voice low. Emma nods slowly, her face pale. I don't know what it was, but it's real. As Emma leaves the store, she knows she'll never return after hours. Some things, she realizes, are better left unexplored. The unseen customer may never fully reveal itself, but it lingers, always watching, always waiting. I had always seen Macys as the kind of store that represented something bigger. You know, the place everyone visits during the holidays, with the fancy windows and the big sales. It felt iconic. When I first got hired, I thought it would be a dream job. I'd be working retail, sure, but it was Macys. How could anything go wrong? The first night shift didn't feel as glamorous as I imagined. I walked through the entrance, hearing the familiar whoosh of the automatic doors. The store was dark, almost eerie. I was the only one there. It wasn't busy. The quiet hum of the fluorescent lights above me and the distant hum of the air conditioning felt almost alien. The store had a coldness to it, not just temperature-wise, but something deeper. All right, calm down, I told myself, adjusting my uniform. It's just a store. You've worked night shifts before. I went through the back to grab a cart, ready to restock the shoe section, where my manager Sarah had asked me to start. It was colder than usual in the stockroom, but that was nothing out of the ordinary. It's always chilly near the back. As I wheeled the cart down the narrow aisle, the store seemed endless, more expansive than I'd remembered during the day. I passed rows of mannequins that stared at me blankly, their plastic faces expressionless, as if they were judging my every move. Okay, this is ridiculous, I muttered under my breath. Just get to work. I moved quickly, trying not to think too much. But the silence, it was unnerving. It wasn't just quiet. It was like the store itself was holding its breath. I could almost hear the dust settle on the shelves. Then I heard it. A soft click, like the sound of something shifting. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Was that just the shelves settling? I told myself it was nothing, but the feeling didn't leave. The store felt like it was watching me. The aisles stretched far and wide, too empty, too still. I glanced around. Nothing. But then I heard it again. Click. It wasn't coming from behind me this time. It was in front of me. I turned sharply, my eyes scanning every aisle in front of me, but there was no one there. "Sarah?" I called out. My voice sounded small in the vast emptiness of the store. No response. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing through the aisles. There was something so wrong about how loud they sounded in the silence. I could feel my pulse quicken, the hairs on my neck standing up. Suddenly the lights flickered. The flickering lights weren't unusual. Macys was an old building. Sometimes the wiring would act up. I tried to shake off the unease and continued stocking the shelves. But the cold, it had become unbearable. I rubbed my arms trying to warm up, but the chill didn't go away. If anything, it was getting worse. I reached for the nearest rack to steady myself, but it was freezing. I wasn't used to this kind of cold in the middle of summer. Just as I was about to make my way to the next aisle, I felt it. A presence. I turned around, quickly scanning the space, but once again there was nothing. The store was still as ever, the shelves perfectly arranged. The mannequins stood where they were supposed to, their blank stares piercing through the darkness. But the feeling didn't go away. I wasn't alone. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Where are you?" I pulled out my radio and tried to reach her, but the static was so loud that it hurt my ears. "Sarah?" I repeated louder this time. "Can you hear me?" Silence. Then, the crackling sound of the radio came to life. "Over. Back aisle." It was barely audible, but I recognized the voice. It was Sarah. I took a deep breath and started heading toward the back aisle where I thought she might be. The longer I walked, the colder it got. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, the goosebumps rising on my skin. The air felt heavier with each step, suffocating even. As I walked, I noticed something. The lights above me, flickering with every step. No, this isn't right, I thought. I knew I wasn't imagining it. Something was wrong. I reached the aisle, but there was no sign of Sarah. Instead, I found something else. A shadow. It was moving. Not like a person, but like something more. Fluid. Stretching and shifting along the floor. It was as if it was alive. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't the first time I'd been scared of a shadow, but something about this was different. The shadow paused, then moved again, this time slithering toward me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Sarah?" The shadow grew larger, stretching across the floor like ink spilled from a bottle. And then, it stopped, dead still. That's when I heard it, the whisper. So cold, so lonely. The voice sounded distant, but it was unmistakable. The shadow was trying to speak. I felt the urge to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My heart was racing. The shadow twitched. Then slowly it started to move toward me again. I turned, panic setting in, and sprinted toward the exit. But when I reached the front of the store, the automatic doors refused to open. I slammed my palm against the glass, desperate. I was trapped. I don't remember how long I stood there panicking, pressing the button on the door. My breath was coming in short, frantic gasps, my mind racing. What was happening? Why couldn't I leave? The lights flickered again, this time fully going out. The store was plunged into darkness. Then, I saw it. The shadow was standing in front of me. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It had formed into a figure, a man, or something like it. His face was twisted in agony, his mouth moving silently. The air was so cold now, I could see my breath fogging in front of me. "Help me. Please," he whispered, his voice cracked and broken. I didn't know what he was asking for, but in that moment I knew what I had to do. I reached for the radio again and hit the button, desperation in my voice. "Sarah, I need help, please." The radio crackled, and this time Sarah's voice came through clearly. "Get out now, leave the store, it's not safe." But I couldn't move. The The shadow lunged forward. I don't know how I made it out. The shadow was gone by the time I stumbled outside, but the memory of it is burned in my mind. Macys wasn't just haunted, it was cursed. The store itself was a prison, trapping those who wandered inside. That night I didn't go back. I never returned to Macys. It was another late night at Macys, the kind of shift that felt endless. I had always hated working nights, especially in a department store as massive as this. The echoing silence, the flickering lights, and the cold air that seemed to permeate the building were all too much to bear, but I needed the money. After graduation, with the crushing weight of student loans hanging over my head, I had to take what I could get. My name is Emma, and I was only 24 years old. A few years ago, I wouldn't have dreamed of taking a graveyard shift at a store like Macys. But life, as it often does, had a way of steering you in directions you never planned. So here I was, working the midnight shift alone, surrounded by shelves of mannequins and rows of clothes, all bathed in the cold, flickering fluorescent lights. I couldn't shake the feeling that the store had a life of its own. It wasn't just a building. It felt like something alive, something that watched you, breathed with you, and sometimes whispered when you weren't listening. My mother had always warned me about places like this. Not everything is what it seems, Emma. Some things are best left untouched, she had told me before she died in a tragic car accident 2 years ago. I hadn't understood what she meant at the time, but as I stood in the deserted aisles of Macys that night, I was starting to wonder if she had known something I didn't. The shift started like any other. I began in the shoe aisle, tidying up the mess left by customers earlier in the day. The store was so quiet, it almost felt unnatural. The occasional hum of the overhead lights was the only sound, and it echoed eerily through the empty aisles. As I made my way down the men's section, I noticed something strange. One of the mannequins, a tall, well-dressed figure in a black suit, had moved. At first, I thought maybe it was my imagination. After all, I'd been working for hours, and fatigue often played tricks on the mind. But when I looked again, the mannequin's position had changed. It was no longer standing straight, but slightly turned, facing me. My heart skipped a beat. I shook it off, blaming it on the exhaustion that had begun to set in. But then it happened again. A few minutes later, as I passed the women's clothing section, I noticed that another mannequin had shifted, its head now facing toward me. I froze. Something was wrong here, but I told myself it was just my nerves. After all, I'd been alone for hours in a massive, empty store. I pulled out my phone to text Sarah, my manager. She'd left me a message earlier, reminding me to stay in the main sections and avoid the back stockroom. It was as if she knew something I didn't. I hadn't asked her why, but I figured it was just part of the late-night routine. "Hey Sarah, everything okay?" I typed quickly. But before I could hit send, I heard a faint click from behind me. I spun around but saw nothing, only rows of neatly arranged clothes, the store as empty as it had been for hours. The air in the store grew colder, and I felt it more acutely now. My breath began to mist in front of me, a small cloud that swirled in the still air. I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders, trying to ignore the growing discomfort. I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I glanced toward the entrance, where the store's massive glass doors stood, locked and silent. There, in the shadows, was a figure. At first I thought it was a customer who had slipped in unnoticed. But then I realized it was much more than that. The figure was tall, wearing an old-fashioned coat, and its face was obscured by the shadows. It stood completely still, staring at me from the entrance. I didn't know why, but I couldn't move. I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone. A shiver ran down my spine. My phone buzzed, interrupting the silence. It was Sarah. "Don't go near the back stockroom, it's not safe tonight." I frowned at the text. What did she mean by that? The stockroom was part of my duties, and I couldn't just avoid it. I shrugged off the unease and pushed forward, telling myself it was just a trick of the light, my imagination running wild from the isolation. But as I passed the toy aisle, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I heard something, a whisper. It was so faint at first I thought it was just the wind or the air vents. But then I heard it again, a voice, a low, almost guttural sound. Emma. My breath caught in my throat. I whipped around, heart pounding in my chest. The store was still empty. There was no one there. But the voice, it was real. I could feel it in my bones. I felt the cold air tighten around me like a vice. The mannequins, there were more of them now. They seemed to have moved closer, their eyes fixed on me with unnatural intensity. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a display of shoes. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. I answered without looking at the screen. Emma, a voice said, barely above a whisper. It was Sarah's voice. You need to leave. You need to leave now. Sarah? What's going on? I asked, my voice trembling. What's happening? There's something in the store, Emma. Something old, something dangerous. It's been waiting for you. Waiting for me? I asked, confused. What do you mean? Sarah hesitated. It's connected to your past. The store. It's not just a store. It's a trap, and you've been drawn into it. Suddenly, everything clicked. The eerie cold, the mannequins, the figure in the doorway. It was all connected. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. When I was a child, my mother would take me to this very Macys. She'd always seemed so nervous when we were here, as if she was afraid of something. As Sarah's voice crackled through the phone, I recalled something my mother had once said, her voice shaking. Not everything in this world is what it seems, Emma. Macys isn't just a store, it's a doorway. I had brushed it off back then, thinking she was just paranoid. But now, I realized that she had known. She had known about the curse that lingered in this place. I tried to run, but the doors wouldn't open. I slammed my palms against the glass, panic surging through me. My heart raced, my breath shallow. The store was alive, shifting around me. I turned to see the figure again. This time, it wasn't standing still. It was moving toward me, slowly, deliberately, its face still obscured by shadow. I backed away, stumbling through aisles, the walls seeming to close in on me. The mannequins, no, they weren't mannequins anymore. They were moving, their joints creaking as they advanced. The figure reached the center of the store, and I could finally see its face. It wasn't a man at all. It was something far older. Its eyes were hollow, its skin a strange, waxy gray. It opened its mouth, a voice escaping that sounded like 1,000 whispers. You should never have come here. With a scream, I ran down the toy aisle, trying to find an escape. The figure followed, its footsteps echoing behind me. Then, something strange happened. I noticed a large, ornate mirror at the end of the aisle, a mirror that hadn't been there before. It wasn't part of the store's usual decor. I stared into it, my reflection distorted, like something was pulling at me from the other side. The figure stood in the mirror, smiling, but it wasn't the same figure I had been running from. This one was a reflection of someone else, someone I recognized. It was me, but not the Emma I knew. The reflection was older, her face pale and cold. And then I realized it wasn't just a reflection. It was the woman I would become. The curse was bound to me. I screamed, grabbed a nearby toy, and hurled it at the mirror, shattering the glass. The store shook violently, the lights flickering wildly. The figure let out a blood-curdling scream as it disappeared, vanishing into the broken mirror. The store fell silent. I stumbled out of Macy's, gasping for air. My heart was still racing, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. The cold night air was a relief, but the terror was far from over. I could feel it lurking, waiting for me to turn around and face it again. I looked back at the store. The doors were locked, the windows dark. There was no sign of life within. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Macy's wasn't just a store. It was a place trapped in time, bound to a curse that had been waiting for someone like me. The next day, I went back to check on the store. Sarah had quit her job after the incident. She never returned my calls. When I asked around, I found out that the Macy's store had been closed for good, not for renovation, but because of a strange series of events that had occurred over the years. The building had stood there for decades, long before it became a Macy's. The land it stood on was cursed, tied to an ancient pact that had been forgotten by most. I spoke with an old employee who had worked there for years before it closed. He looked at me with haunted eyes and said, "There's something inside that store, something that takes you when you least expect it. You'll never escape once it has its hold on you." But no one really knows what happened to the place. The store was eventually demolished, the land was sold, and a new building went up in its place. But sometimes when I pass by the new shopping center, I catch a glimpse of the old Macy's building in the reflection of the glass doors. A shadow, a whisper. I don't know if I'll ever fully escape it. I've tried to move on, tried to forget, but the memories still haunt me, and deep down I can feel it. The curse is still there, waiting for someone else to stumble into its grip. And every night as I lay in bed, I hear a faint whisper in the darkness. "Emma." I don't know if it's a warning or a promise, but either way, I know one thing for sure. Some stories, some places will never truly be gone, and Macy's will always be waiting for the next person to walk through its doors. I'd always hated working at the retail store, especially on the late-night shifts. The long hours, the quiet aisles, the flickering fluorescent lights. Everything about it made the place feel eerie. It wasn't a huge store, but it was always filled with strange occurrences. The job was mundane, yes, but as the nights grew darker, something felt off. Something I couldn't explain. I worked at a 24-hour retail chain known simply as 9 Retail. It wasn't a famous brand, but it was known for staying open all night, catering to the late-night crowd that needed convenience. The company had been struggling recently, and rumors had started circulating that the place was about to close. On a particularly quiet Wednesday night, I found myself on the store's midnight shift, the clock ticking ever so slowly as the night dragged on. I was alone in the aisle when I heard it, a soft, shuffling sound coming from the back stockroom. At first, I told myself it was just the wind, but the sound persisted. I glanced around. No customers. No one was supposed to be in the store at this hour. Then it happened again. A faint whisper, followed by footsteps that seemed to echo throughout the empty store. I froze. I should have checked the security footage, but something told me to stay where I was. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my pulse quickened. When I finally gathered the courage to check, the stockroom door creaked as I opened it. There on the floor was an open box of merchandise, completely untouched just moments ago. But something was wrong. The shelves were in disarray, and the entire backroom felt colder. A chill ran down my spine. As I began to close the box, I noticed something unusual, a strange symbol carved into the wall, barely visible in the dim light. "Hello," I called out, but no one answered. The store was silent, and the strange unease I felt grew stronger. I quickly left the room and made my way back to the main floor, trying to shake off the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then I saw it. One of the mannequins in the clothing section, the one closest to the aisle, had moved. It wasn't much, just a small shift, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. I walked closer, and it was as if the mannequin was watching me, its empty eyes following me across the store. I turned to leave, but as I passed another aisle, I heard it again. Footsteps, the unmistakable sound of someone, or something, walking behind me. I spun around expecting to see a customer or a coworker, but there was no one there. I reached for my phone and dialed my manager, Sarah. She didn't pick up. Panic started to set in, but I couldn't afford to overreact. I was alone, and no one would believe me if I told them. The next few nights were worse. The strange noises continued, and the mannequins began to move more frequently. I started noticing things that weren't there before. Shadows lurking at the edges of my vision, flickering lights that couldn't be fixed, whispers that seemed to come from all directions. The feeling of being watched never left. It was as if the store itself had come alive, its cold walls holding something sinister. I began to research the store's history, but there was no mention of anything unusual. Yet the more I dug, the more unsettling the connections became. The symbol in the stockroom? It was linked to an old urban legend about cursed properties, places built on land where tragedies had occurred, where spirits remained forever trapped. The stories matched perfectly with the strange happenings I had been experiencing. And then one evening, while I was in the store, I overheard a conversation between two older employees. They were talking in hushed voices about a dark incident that had happened in the store's past. One of them mentioned the curse that had haunted the building for years. "Don't go near the back stockroom after hours," one of them warned. "That's where it all started." I tried to brush it off as superstition, but it became harder to ignore. The store was changing. The aisles were longer, the shadows darker. It felt as though the walls themselves were closing in. I began to question my sanity. Was I imagining all of this? It was on the 9th night of my shifts, 9 p.m. sharp, when the store transformed. I had always found the timing odd. Why 9? But I wasn't prepared for what happened that night. I was at the register, ringing up a customer, when the lights flickered one last time, plunging the store into complete darkness. The sound of something scraping across the floor echoed from the back. It wasn't just the stockroom this time. It was everywhere. The ground vibrated under my feet. My phone died. The doors, which had always been automatic, refused to open. The air was thick with tension, and the oppressive silence weighed down on me. And then I saw it. A figure, tall and cloaked, moving through the aisles. It was dragging something heavy behind it, the sound of metal scraping against the floor filling the space. I ran. I had to get out. But as I reached the emergency exit, I found it locked, as though something was preventing me from leaving. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around to face the figure, the one I had seen in the aisles earlier. Its face was a blur, but its eyes were black, empty pits, staring into my soul. "You're not leaving," it whispered. I collapsed, my mind racing, struggling to understand what was happening. It was then that I realized the truth. The store had never been just a retail store. It was built on land where an ancient curse had been placed centuries ago, land that had witnessed the deaths of many. The retail chain, 9 Retail, had unknowingly awakened something when it set up shop in that location. The curse was tied to the number 9. Every 9th night, the store would come alive, dragging souls into its twisted realm, trapping them in a never-ending cycle. I was just the latest victim. I tried to run again, but the aisles twisted and turned in impossible directions. Every exit I found led me deeper into the store. It felt like the walls were shifting, like I was in a maze that had no way out. As I stumbled through the store, I heard the voices of former employees, some of whom I had seen in the store before. Their faces were pale, their eyes vacant. They were all trapped, just like me, forever wandering the aisles, unable to escape. I don't remember how I managed to break free from the store. All I know is that the moment I stepped outside, the world seemed different. The store was still there, looming behind me, but I wasn't sure if it was real anymore. I didn't return to work. I couldn't. I quit the job that night and moved far away, but the nightmares followed me. I still hear the whispers sometimes, and sometimes in the corner of my eye I see the shadows moving. I'll never forget what I learned about 9 Retail. It's more than a store. It's a nightmare, one that feeds off the souls of those who dare to enter. If you ever find yourself in one, especially on the 9th night, don't stay. You may never leave. I had been working at Macys for almost 2 years, and the midnight shifts were something I had gotten used to. There was something oddly calming about the emptiness of the store at night. The sound of my footsteps echoing through the aisles, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. It was almost meditative, except for the creeping feeling that always seemed to follow me around after hours. I was alone. I usually preferred it that way. No customers to distract me, no rush to get things done. Just me and the endless shelves of merchandise that needed stocking. But tonight felt different. The usual eerie silence seemed to stretch out longer than normal. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The lights flickered once, but I thought nothing of it. A common occurrence in old buildings, I told myself. I pushed the cart down the aisle, restocking perfume bottles. As I turned the corner, I thought I heard something faint, almost a whisper. I froze, listening carefully. It wasn't loud enough to be certain, but I swore I heard my name. Lena. I blinked, my heart skipping a beat. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see someone there. Maybe a fellow employee or even a customer who had somehow snuck in. But the aisle was empty. No one. The store was as silent as ever. I shook my head, trying to brush it off. I was just tired. That had to be it. But as I turned back to my cart, my skin crawled. The feeling of being watched returned, and this time, it was impossible to ignore. I tried to focus on my work, but my thoughts kept drifting. The store felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something wasn't right. The air felt colder, and there was a heaviness to the silence. I was almost finished with my shift when I wandered into the break room to take a short break. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, I noticed something odd hanging on the wall, an old photograph of the store. It wasn't like the sleek, modern Macys we had today. This one looked ancient. It was black and white, the edges curled and faded. The store in the picture was smaller with a much different layout. The most unsettling thing, though, was the figure standing in the background. A person, no, something, just barely visible, cloaked in shadow. I stared at it, unease crawling up my spine. Who were they? Why were they in this photo? The figure's face was hidden, but their presence was unmistakable. It was like they were watching me. The moment was broken when my coworker, Nina, came into the break room shaking her head. She had worked here for years, and she was the kind of person who didn't believe in any supernatural nonsense. "Lena, you okay?" she asked, noticing the odd expression on my face as I stared at the picture. I nodded, trying to shake off the discomfort I was feeling. "Just looking at this old photo. It's weird, right?" Nina followed my gaze and scoffed. "Oh yeah, this place has a long history of weird stuff. The building was originally a mansion, you know. They say it burned down years ago with people inside." My stomach dropped. She continued, "Some people think the spirits of those who died are still around here. If I were you, I wouldn't stay after hours alone. Things get strange." I laughed it off, not wanting to admit that I was already starting to feel something was off. "I'm fine. It's probably just the late hours getting to me." But as I looked back at the photograph, the figure seemed to loom closer. The rest of the night passed in a blur of restocking and cleaning. Every now and then I'd hear a strange noise, footsteps in the distance, a creak from the ceiling, the sound of something moving. But every time I'd turn around, nothing would be there. I found myself walking toward the old storage area at the back of the store, my curiosity getting the best of me. As I passed the perfume section again, I heard it. This time it was unmistakable. A whisper right in my ear. "Lena." I spun around, heart pounding, but again the aisle was empty. There was no one there. I wasn't imagining it. I walked quickly, trying to shake off the dread pooling in my chest. When I reached the storage area, I spotted an old set of bookshelves, cluttered with papers and boxes. As I sifted through them, I found an old, dusty ledger. Opening it, I saw the name of the mansion that had once stood in this very spot, Hargrave Manor. The ledger contained entries of people who had worked for the family that owned it, but one entry stood out. The date, April 7th, 1922. The entry read, "Family perished in fire. All were lost in the blaze. No bodies found. It is said that their spirits still haunt the place." I closed the ledger quickly, my hands trembling. I had to know more, but I couldn't bring myself to read any further. The room suddenly felt much colder, and the air thickened around me. It felt like something was closing in. I rushed back to the main floor, trying to push my anxiety aside. I was just overreacting. It had been a long night, and I had another hour to go before I could clock out. But as I walked through the aisles, I noticed something strange. The mannequins in the women's section weren't where they had been earlier. They were scattered throughout the aisles, their faces turned toward me. I froze, staring at them. There was no way they could have moved on their own. I walked toward them slowly, my feet heavy on the floor. As I passed one, I felt a cold breeze, like a breath on my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the mannequins. But something wasn't right. One of them, a woman dressed in a vintage red dress, was facing me now, its eyes open, staring directly at me. I reached out to touch it, to make sure I wasn't imagining it, but as my fingers brushed against the mannequin's hand, it blinked. I stepped back, gasping. It wasn't a mannequin, it was alive. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't alone. By now, the fear was overwhelming. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was all in my head, but the whispering voices continued. They called my name, sometimes faint, other times loud and desperate. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I kept checking the security cameras, but all I saw was the grainy footage of empty aisles. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, but it wasn't the usual store announcements. A distorted voice came through, garbled and strange. "Lena, stay. Forever." I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get out. The front door was locked, the back doors too. The store felt like it was closing in on me, and no matter where I turned, I couldn't escape. I stumbled into the old fitting rooms, my breath coming in short gasps. As I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection stared back at me, but something was wrong. I was no longer alone in the room. The figures from the photograph, the ones who had died in the fire, were standing behind me, their hollow eyes watching me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My legs buckled beneath me as I collapsed to the floor. The spirits surrounded me, their faces twisted in agony. They reached for me, pulling me closer. "You can't leave," one of them whispered. "You never leave." The last thing I saw was the shadowy figure from the photograph, its face slowly coming into focus. The flames, the fire, the screams, all of it flooded my mind. And then, darkness. The next morning I woke up in the fitting room. The lights were on and the store was completely still. I rushed to the front doors, and this time they opened without resistance. I stepped out into the fresh air, my chest heavy with fear. But when I glanced back at the store, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The mannequins, every single one, was staring at me, their eyes lifelike, following my every movement. I looked down at my hands. They were stiff, cold to the touch. And then I realized I hadn't left. In the fitting room, my reflection stared back at me through the glass of the store's entrance. Only it wasn't my reflection. It was one of the mannequins from inside the store. It was wearing my uniform, holding the same cart I'd been pushing all night. Its blank, frozen expression mocked me. Panic surged through me. I ran, my feet pounding against the pavement, desperate to put distance between myself and Macys. But as I reached the edge of the parking lot, I felt an invisible force pulling me back, like the store itself wasn't ready to let me go. I screamed, clawing at the air, but it was no use. My body froze, my limbs rigid as stone. Slowly, my vision blurred, the world around me darkening until all I could see was the dim light of the fitting room mirror. When I blinked again, I was back inside the store, standing motionless in the women's section. My reflection stared back at me from the shiny glass of a display case, but it wasn't human anymore. I was one of them, one of the mannequins, forever trapped in Macy's midnight terror.